Hi, it's just Rachel here again. I don't know how many of you have been following the story of YouTuber Witness Nomore. His name's Mark, and I believe he's in the UK. And he recorded about 60 conversations, I think. Well, he's uploaded that number of videos of conversations he's had with elders in one or two congregations, and basically he's been disfellowshipped. And his story was that he was baptized 25 years ago but was never a very spiritually strong brother, in his words, partly because of his line of work, which required him to work nights. So I guess that meant he slept in the day, and he didn't really make many friends in the organisation. So he was sort of in and out of the organisation, becoming inactive and then coming back in and then going out again, that sort of thing, for quite a long time. And apparently a couple of years ago he decided to try and make a comeback and was assigned to have a study with somebody to get him built up spiritually again. But in the course of his studying, he came across some rather negative information about the organisation. He had a CD slipped under his door, which it just said to watch it. He thought it was probably from a brother, and it had Jeffrey Jackson on it with his testimony at the Australian Royal Commission in 2015. And investigating this, he came across other information as well. So his whole series of videos that he's recorded basically are of him trying to get assistance from the elders to help him clarify all these issues that had been raised in his mind about the organisation. Things like, why did the organisation become affiliated with the United Nations as a non-governmental organisation for about 10 years, and they only resigned when a newspaper exposed the affiliation. So there were mainly reports that exposed the organisation or cast it in an unflattering light. So he needed help from the elders to explain what these things were and make a defence for the organisation. That's what he was wanting to hear. But of course the elders were not very willing to discuss any of these matters with him. They did feel that for some of the things there was no answer, because they didn't know. They didn't know anything about some of the things that he asked, and they expected him to be happy with that. Doesn't seem very reasonable to me. But anyway, rightly or wrongly, Mark recorded these conversations, and of course, had these elders known that they were being recorded, there probably would have been no conversation. So, and as it turned out, they did become aware of it eventually, and he still kept on recording and posting on YouTube. So they were quite upset about that. But anyway, what was very interesting in Mark's videos was like in his judicial committee meeting, one of the elders expressed that at least part of the reason for meeting him that day was for damage limitation. They were concerned that Mark was airing the organisation's dirty laundry, which they don't even view as factual, because they've never looked into it. But the fact that, I guess that Mark was talking about things like the Australian Royal Commission and the United Nations thing, they saw that as bringing reproach on Jehovah's name, because they sort of combine Jehovah and the organisation almost like one thing. So that was kind of concerning, the extent that they want to protect the reputation of the organisation at the expense of truth. And they also, one of the elders was saying that he doesn't troll the internet looking for negative reports about Jehovah's organisation. They're perfectly happy to accept and share the good reports, but they don't go trolling looking for bad stuff, because primarily it's not encouraging to them. It doesn't build them up. To examine negative reports about Jehovah's organisation is not encouraging or upbuilding, and that they shouldn't be doing it. So to me that seems like, burying one's head in the sand, refusing to look at anything negative and accepting the positive. They're very quick to, like at his appeal committee meeting, which he also recorded, one of the brothers there kept stressing about the source of the information that Mark was getting, that if the source of the information is not Jehovah's organisation, then it's basically false, it's lies, it's apostate from Satan. So they're not willing to examine anything from another source that's not the organisation. You wonder, how can they really make, like not too long ago there was an article in one of the, I think it was a Watchtower, and it was called, and I have it here, Winning the Battle for Your Mind. It's talking about propaganda. And they actually quote somebody here who wrote a book. The book is Media and Society in the 20th Century. And it talks here about propaganda being effective if people are discouraged from thinking critically. And those who have actually looked up this quote from this particular publication said that the writer actually went on to say that they needed to look at multiple sources of information, not just one source, which is what these brothers in the appeal committee meeting and the other elders in the judicial committee we're only looking at information from one source, from the organisation itself, and not looking at other sources. So how can they really get a true picture of reality if they're not considering other viewpoints? They're really giving in to the propaganda of the Watchtower, aren't they? And not able to think critically. Because the things that Mark was bringing up, they are publicly known. A lot of people will know about them if they read news on the internet. So they will know a lot more about what's going on with Jehovah's Witnesses than the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves, who are discouraged from reading the media. Questions about the child sexual abuse, the two-witness rule, the way that matter is handled in the congregations is all in public now. Yet a lot of witnesses don't really know anything about it. You would think that when Mark brings things up, that the elders would go away and do their research. And I can't understand why. The governing body must know that people must be asking questions about these things. Why don't they prepare their elders to answer these questions, rather than quickly saying that, those are apostate questions. Like there was another brother who also uploaded a video to YouTube. He was in a kingdom hall. He was a disfellowship brother. He had questions about similar things to Mark, I think. And he was asking, and I believe it was an elder in his congregation, why they were refusing to meet with him to discuss these questions he had. And what he was told was that if he had the right kind of questions, then they would help him. But his questions were apostate questions. So basically, any question that either cannot be answered or the answer will cast the organisation in an unfavourable light, or anything that it would be seen as a criticism of the organisation, automatically is an apostate question. I mean, that's really ridiculous, isn't it? Oh, gosh. And the treatment Mark got from his elders was pretty much the same, that those questions that he was asking must have been planted in him by apostate sources, people who were opposed to Jehovah, who were intent on breaking down the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses. Not legitimate, honestly asked questions. I mean, it's absurd, really, isn't it? When I became a witness, and I studied the Paradise Earth book, and one of the early chapters there, it tells you that your religion does matter, and that you will recognise true from false religion by the fruitage produced by the religion. So, as witnesses, we were taught to scrutinise religion, scrutinise their teachings and their practices. So that's what we do, and Jehovah's Witnesses are very good at judging other religions and pointing out their flaws and their practices that might not be in line with the Bible or that harm people. They're very quick to point those out. And I remember an illustration that we used to use when we were going door to door, especially when speaking to other religious people. We would say, if you had a glass of water and you knew there was just one drop of poison in there, just one drop, would you be prepared to drink that glass of water? And of course the answer is no. And we were taught to look at religion that way. If there was one drop of poison in it, then that religion would be false. But it always applied to other religions. Jehovah's Witnesses never turn around and have a look at their own and honestly examine it. And when you do look at it honestly, you see that there are a lot of drops of poison in it, but witnesses will still drink the water anyway. For some reason, when it's their own organisation, it's different. So these brothers were quite willing to bury their heads in the sand and pretend that these bad things weren't happening, because they're not encouraging or upbuilding. That just doesn't wash, does it? So this business of quickly accusing anyone who's asking questions that either witnesses cannot answer or they know the answer is going to make the organisation look bad, they quickly say that they are apostate questions. Even, technically speaking, an apostate to a witness should be someone who used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses and who has left the truth. And they sometimes refer to Christendom, all the churches sort of lumped together, as apostate Christendom. But as far as individuals, usually an apostate is an individual who has left Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's got to the point that even members of the public, when they ask Jehovah's Witnesses a question, perhaps at one of their carts in public, if they don't like the way the questioning is going, they will accuse the person of being apostate. And that happened recently to Hannah, Kelly girl, who has her YouTube channel. And she's an amazing Christian who is not shy about witnessing to people. And just recently she was out walking her dog. Well, he was in a pram because of his arthritis. And she passed a couple of sisters at their cart, so she started asking them questions about the faithful and discreet slave, and how can they prove from the scriptures that they are who they say they are, that they are the appointed channel of communication between God and mankind. And as much as they tried to change the subject, and they were friendly at first, Hannah kept bringing it back onto the subject, and they actually got quite irritated in the end, and their demeanour changed fairly quickly, and they said that they didn't want to talk to her anymore, and that they would call the police for harassment. And as they walked off, one of these sisters turned around and called her apostate. And Hannah has never been one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So just because they did not like her line of reasoning, they accused her of being apostate, even though there was nothing wrong with her line of reasoning, and I'm sure that she was speaking to them in a very kind manner, because I've seen her videos where she's speaking to people. And they had this reaction, and I think it's getting more common among Jehovah's Witnesses when they are unable to defend a belief or unable to defend the position of the governing body, because it's pretty indefensible, really. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous the way they try and support that belief of theirs. I think, they feel pushed into a corner and trapped, and then lash out like a cornered animal, I suppose. So it's a very unreasonable response, and they really don't have any choice, really, because the governing body doesn't really give them any good scriptural reasoning that stands up. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Don't think I've this business about the fruitage. You might be familiar or remember this, talking about false religion. And in this Kingdom News, it specifically mentions false religion as tolerating immoral sex, and that it may tolerate religious leaders who have sexually abused children. So when we look at what's been happening with the Australian Royal Commission, and also in the UK and the United States and Canada, Poland, all over the place, where sexual abuse of children in the organisation has come to light of recent times, surely that would have to be considered as bad fruitage, as rotten fruitage. So I don't know how witnesses can just sweep that under the carpet. In one of these articles here, May 1st, 2012, it actually says here that religion's involvement in war, terrorism, and the toleration of child abuse has led even prayerful people to say, I don't believe in God. So according to that, the witnesses' toleration, or what's a better word, enabling of child sexual abuse in the organisation, because of the way they handle it, certainly has stumbled many witnesses, that's for sure, the victims and their families and others that have come to a knowledge of it, and quite a few are now ex-witnesses, still haven't seen justice, many of them. But according to this, Jehovah's Witnesses may cause people to say, I don't believe in God. So that's not very good fruitage of the supposed true religion, is it? Anyway, I think that really is it this time. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye.